So I finally was able to gather enough guinea eggs to put them in my incubator and do a hatch, and wouldn't you know it, the power went out, not once, but 4 times. So I very quickly had to learn what to do in order to keep my hatch from going bad. And I'm gonna tell you today what you should do if you have lost power for your incubator. I'm Kelsey from roughandtumblefarmhouse.com, and every single week I share stories about farming, family food, and fortitude here on our 5-acre homestead in northern Minnesota. So the information I'm going to share with you today comes from the book Hatching and Brooding Your Own Chicks by Gail, I think it's pronounced Damrow, I'm not positive, but she's kind of an expert when it comes to all things poultry, and I was grateful to have her book on my shelf when the power went out, because I did one of the absolute worst things you could do if your power goes out for your incubator. And she says in the book why you shouldn't do that and explains it. So I'm going to talk you through what you need to do, and it's pretty simple. First of all, why might the power go out? In our case, we had some really bad spring storms, and so we lost power one time for a couple hours, one time for just 20 minutes, and the longest we had our power out was 12 hours. So power outages in the spring, of course, when you're also hatching chicks, can happen because of bad storms. You might have a spouse who goes to make coffee or something and it unplugs your incubator if you have it kind of right in your kitchen like we do. And there's also the possibility that your incubator just stops working, which is something that can happen because incubators have a shelf life too, like anything else, and they might just stop functioning. So let's say, first of all, what you absolutely should not do, and that is you should not wrap your incubator in blankets or a towel. And that was my first reaction, because I thought, there's little eggs in there, they need to be kept warm. It's already at, 99 degrees and the humidity is set right. I'll just wrap the whole thing in a towel and hopefully that'll just kind of maintain. Well, if you look at your incubator, the cover has a little hole on it, and that allows for oxygen and airflow to happen inside your incubator. And if you cover that up and you wrap the whole incubator in a towel, you are depriving those eggs of oxygen, because those little embryos in there are actually getting oxygen as it absorbs through the shell of their egg. And if you have that blocked off for an extended period of time, it can basically suffocate your little embryos as they're developing in the egg. So I know it seems like the right idea, but please do not wrap your incubator in blankets or towels if you lose power. Now, if the power goes out, first of all, you can't just let your incubator sit for probably 15-20 minutes without futzing with it at all, because I know sometimes that happens here. The power will blip off and it'll come back on. Just don't panic. So first of all, when the power goes out, write down the time if you think you're going to forget it, or punch it in your phone or something so you remember what time the power went out. Once you hit kind of past that 15-20 minute mark, what you want to do very simply is take the cover off. And that's it. I know it sounds pretty simple, and it is really simple, because you just want to remove that cover, and it's going to allow the eggs to cool. It's going to bring their temperature down. And what that does is it slows their metabolism, and it's just going to kind of bring their development down to kind of a dormancy. Now, if your incubator loses power, it doesn't mean, of course, that your whole hatch is going to go bad. It really depends on a couple of different things. One is how long you are without power, and the second one is how far along you are in the incubation process. So if the chicks are just in that first week of incubating, and you take the cover off and they cool and their metabolism slows, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Also, if you're at the tail end of your incubation, it's not as big of a deal either, because they are actually developed enough that they can start to generate a little bit of their own heat from within their shells. So it's actually, if you're kind of in that around the end of week 1, kind of to the end of week 2, if you're doing chicken eggs or it's a 3-week process, it's kind of in that ballpark where you're at a little bit of a riskier time in terms of their development, where they're past the point of being really, really little, but they're not quite to the point of being big enough to start generating their own heat. Other thing, of course, that is going to affect the hatch is how long you are without power. So in Gail's book, she says that anything up to 12 hours typically isn't going to affect your hatch rate too much, but because you did slow down that embryonic development, you can expect your hatch to happen a little bit later, maybe a day or two later than it normally would have happened. She also says once you hit that 18-hour mark, then you're definitely going to see a big drop in your successful hatch if they go that long without heat. So something you can do is, if your electricity has been out for a long time, and let's say you're hitting around maybe that 10-hour mark, maybe start making some phone calls and see if there's any friends in the area that do have power and are up for having your incubator brought over. That is, if you've lost electricity because of a power outage of some kind. So you can transport your eggs over there. Do not transport them in the incubator. I advise just putting them in a carton, put them pointy side down, and do not close the carton. Leave the carton open so they're still getting plenty of oxygen, and then just transport them as quickly and as safely as possible to their new location. Get them set up in the incubator, plug her in, and let her buck. So some things you can do to prepare for future power outages. One is if you don't have your incubator plugged into a surge protector, that's a really good idea. Incubators are not exactly cheap. I think ours was like $155 or something like that. And if you have a high jolt of electricity, there's some sort of power surge because of lightning or something like that, it can negatively impact how your incubator functions if it doesn't just fry it completely. So it's a good idea to plug in your incubators to a surge protector. Now, in terms of having backup power on hand, of course, you can have a regular generator. The smaller size kind of generators, I was looking because we don't have one, I actually should probably get one, run around $400 up to in the thousands for the generators you're gonna get. But that is an option if you're incubating a lot of chicks, is to get a small generator. They also even make little kind of tabletop models. Those are, I was looking online, you can find for about $150 to $200. And those, though, you want to check and make sure that they're going to be putting out enough juice basically to actually power your incubator. It's silly to buy it if it's not going to be enough to run that little incubator. So there you have it. It is not super complicated. You're just taking your lid off and you're starting to pay attention to that time. If you go the 12 hours, you should be pretty okay. If you hit that 18-hour mark, it's a little bit sketchier, so look for a backup for plugging in your chicks someplace else. If you have had success with keeping your hatch going well when you have lost power, please be sure to share that in the comments below. It's always great to hear. Always check back here every single week for a new video about farming, family food, and fortitude here at our Rough and Tumble farmhouse.